Ju Hyun, a female cybercrime officer, went undercover as a provocative streamer, immersing herself in the rhythm of rapper Phao's 2-minute-plus song. Her mission was to infiltrate and investigate an illegal operation disguised as an online entertainment platform. She actively engaged with the live audience while streaming. Meanwhile, Mu Chan, the city's lead investigator, was watching the live stream. He commented, asking about her outfit. Ju Hyun readily revealed not only the price but also the store's address, conveniently located beneath the very building where she was streaming. Mu Chan, upon receiving this intel, immediately dispatched a support team to the location. The gang leader, growing increasingly irritated with Ju Hyun's stiff dancing and refusal to remove her clothing for the viewers, decided to confront her. Just as he was about to teach her a lesson, Mu Chan arrived. Single-handedly, and without breaking a sweat, he took down the entire gang. Simultaneously, Ju Hyun freed the young women held captive inside. She called a colleague, attempting to give him access to an IP address she'd just obtained. After neutralizing the thugs, Mu Chan entered the control room, leaving behind a photo of a young woman along with several strands of hair, a scene Ju Hyun captured on video. The gang leader, hiding in a cabinet, made a run for it, but was apprehended by the arriving support team. Outside, Ju Hyun tried again to contact her colleague about the IP address, but he couldn't access it due to insufficient permissions. Mu Chan approached, snatched her phone, and deleted the video she'd recorded. The cold and calculating Mu Chan intended to fabricate evidence to coerce a swift confession. Ju Hyun chased after him, demanding her phone back, but he ignored her. Back at the station, the gang leader refused to confess, arguing that he was merely helping the girls achieve their dreams and deserved praise. He even accused Mu Chan of unlawful entry without a warrant. Mu Chan then presented a photo of a girl named Kang Hee, asking about her. 3 months prior, she was one of his featured performers. The gang leader feigned ignorance, claiming he couldn't remember all the girls who came and went. Mu Chan informed him that Kang Hee had died 4 days earlier. Her last phone call to her family made from his office. Her DNA was also found there. The gang leader continued to deny any involvement, insisting she'd never been inside. Left with no other choice, Mu Chan resorted to a drastic measure. He disabled the cameras and deliberately slammed his own head against the table, accusing the gang leader of assaulting a police officer. Overwhelmed, the gang leader finally confessed. Later, public outrage erupted over the lenient sentencing of another criminal, Gi Chul, who had only received a 1-year sentence for distributing child exploitation videos. Seok Ju joined the protests as people angrily criticized the justice system. Meanwhile, Gi Chul remained arrogant and defiant. Mu Chan escorted him out amidst a sea of angry protesters who hurled insults and even physical blows at the convicted criminal. Before entering the vehicle, Gi Chul turned back to taunt everyone. Mu Chan, provoked, released him into the crowd, who promptly delivered their own brand of justice. The police made no attempt to intervene. Even after leaving, Gi Chul remained smug, suggesting Mu Chan should work for him. Infuriated, Mu Chan picked up a rock and hurled it at the emblem of Gi Chul's car. Realizing he'd pushed the wrong buttons, Gi Chul ordered his men to flee. Mu Chan's attention was then drawn to the foreign woman accompanying Gi Chul. She turned out to be his wife, though he treated her with utter disregard. That evening, Ju Min, Ju Hyun's younger sister, was watching the news about Gi Chul's sex video distribution case. Ju Hyun stopped her, not wanting her sister to watch such disturbing content. Meanwhile, the recently freed Gi Chul continued his illicit activities. His group was holding orphan children captive to film exploitative videos, believing that the lack of parents would minimize potential complications. He also planned to eliminate his foreign wife, deeming her no longer useful and wanting to avoid future repercussions. Simultaneously, Mu Chan met secretly with Gi Chul's wife. Knowing there were more videos of other victims, he urged her to retrieve the hard drives as evidence, promising her safety and a stable life in Korea. He was aware of Gi Chul's brutal abuse and saw this as her only escape. Remaining silent would make her complicit. Mu Chan left as Gi Chul returned, but witnessed him continuing to abuse his wife. Unable to ignore this, Mu Chan smashed a security camera and intervened, giving Gi Chul a thorough beating. Gi Chul could only scream in pain. A few days later, a citywide notification announced a public vote on Gi Chul's execution. Anyone over 18 with a phone could participate in the 1-hour poll. Over 50% approval would be considered a yes vote. Most people treated it as an online outrage exercise, unaware of the potential consequences. Gi Chul, also notified, remained unconcerned, believing someone was trying to sabotage his business. He even encouraged people to vote for his execution, seemingly defiant, oblivious to his impending doom. That night, a masked man abducted Gi Chul, showing him the poll results, 84% in favor of his death. Panic set in as Gi Chul pleaded for his life, but to no avail. The next morning, the police found his body surrounded by money, more stuffed in his mouth. Mu Chan realized the vote was no mere game. He ordered an investigation, but the crime scene yielded no traces, no fingerprints, no footprints, nothing. Soon after, everyone received a video from the masked man claiming responsibility. As proof, he displayed images of Gi Chul's torture, detailing why he deserved to die. He revealed that Gi Chul hadn't earned just 400 million won from child exploitation videos, but 2 billion, yet only served a year and a half. Unrepentant, Gi Chul had even confessed to more undiscovered videos. The masked man declared that the law was flawed, allowing the guilty to live among them. He would therefore enact justice himself, holding execution votes on the 15th and 30th of each month, empowering the public to create a better world. The police chief immediately formed a special task force to apprehend the masked man, but no one volunteered for the dangerous assignment. The chief then assigned Mu Chan, who agreed on one condition, to join the headquarters investigation team if he caught the masked man. That day, Zhu Haiyan met with Mu Chan to discuss the death penalty vote. She claimed to know the identity of the culprit behind the mask. Zhu Haiyan showed Mu Chan a video her cybersecurity team had obtained. She had discovered it before the death penalty vote. Both videos had one thing in common: the masked figure mentioned innocent devils from 8 years ago. There had been a case where a victim's father had killed his daughter's murderer after his release. Zhu Haiyan suspected that the father from that case was the masked figure, and Mu Chan had been the detective in charge of that case. The phrase "guilty devils," likely a mistranslation in the original text, meaning innocent devils, had also been mentioned by the father during the final trial. However, Mu Chan found this absurd, as Mr. Siak Ju was currently serving time in prison. He hadn't received any visitors or mail, making it impossible for him to be behind the death penalty vote. The next morning, Mu Chan visited the prison to see Mr. Siak Ju, still troubled by Zhu Haiyan's words. But Siak Ju refused to see him. Mu Chan inquired with the prison guard and learned that no one had visited Siak Ju, and he had refused to see anyone. Meanwhile, Zhu Haiyan was transferred to the Special Investigations Unit. She was thrilled. After years of menial tasks in cybersecurity, her close colleague, Zhou Dan, came to greet her. He noticed Zhu Haiyan seemed more radiant than usual. That day, Mu Chan met with the taxi driver who had driven Gi Chul that night. The driver had been called as a substitute for Gi Chul, who was heavily intoxicated. He drove Gi Chul to where his car was parked. Afterward, the driver received a message from an anonymous person, directing him to his fare left on the passenger seat. He then left, knowing nothing more. He didn't know who sent the message and gave the number to Mu Chan. Mu Chan immediately had his team check the taxi. Soon, the car was found at a junkyard, nearly crushed, and its dashcam likely unusable. Despite being in prison, Mr. Siak Ju enjoyed certain privileges. All the inmates, including the warden, respected him. Siak Ju was regarded as a professor of law, possessing extensive legal knowledge. He helped the warden finalize his divorce proceedings to avoid child support payments. Later, Mu Chan learned that Zhu Haiyan was interviewing other inmates, asking if they recognized the phrase "guilty devils" again, likely meaning innocent devils. Intrigued, Mu Chan decided to meet with Zhu Haiyan. She wanted to ask him about the death penalty vote, mentioning the phrase "guilty devils" used by the masked figure, the same phrase Siak Ju had used before. She suspected the culprit was connected to Siak Ju, but he denied any involvement or knowledge of the person behind the mask. He advised her, "If you can't find the perpetrator, look to the victims. He's announced his next crime. He's already chosen his target." It seemed Siak Ju knew who the next victim would be, but he refused to answer Zhu Haiyan's questions. She immediately contacted Mu Chan, who was waiting outside. He believed Siak Ju wasn't directly involved, but that the culprit was close to him, and they needed to pressure him to reveal their identity. Elsewhere, a woman, a cruel wife, cooked a meal for her husband, lacing it with poison. Afterward, she took her husband's 2 children to school. While waiting at a red light, she heartlessly tried to push them into oncoming traffic. When that failed, she feigned concern, only to pull them into an alley to berate them. As she was about to strike them, a mysterious figure kidnapped her. The figure was none other than the masked individual. As mentioned before, the death penalty vote will be cast tonight. Some people are waiting for it like they are waiting for the lottery results. This time it is the turn of a 35-year-old woman named Jai Young. She has killed many people for insurance benefits, but was released due to lack of evidence. She has murdered 3 husbands and received insurance money worth billions of dong. Jai Young was sentenced to life in prison for killing her 3rd husband, but she was acquitted because the act of intent was not proven. However, what makes Jai Young truly deserving of death is that she remarried, and this time intentionally injured her husband's children to collect insurance money. Now she also plotted to kill her 4th husband. Does such a person deserve to live? This time the vote, as usual, will last for an hour, and he will decide for everyone. Jai Young from the police later also confirmed the victim's identity. But when they arrived at the house, she was nowhere to be found. Everyone split up to look for her, because Jai Young's phone was located around this area. After a while of searching, they found her in the parking lot. The police could not rescue her while the car had an explosive device. Mu Chan sent Ju Hyun a picture of the bomb so she could find a way to defuse it. Because there was not much time left, so Mu Chan could not wait any longer. He wanted to get the car out of this residential area. Ju Hyun then remembered that there was a high school nearby. The schoolyard was spacious and far from residential areas or shopping malls. After that, Mu Chan wanted Ju Hyun to go there to help him. Mu Chan sat in the car with Jeon. He wanted her to drive to the schoolyard immediately. CO turned out, the bomb was not connected to the accelerator, so it could be driven normally. On the other side, the high school was still full of students and was discussing the death penalty. Soon after, the school announced that all the students would leave the school immediately. The police also arrived to quickly take the students out. At the same time, Mu Chan and Jai Young arrived at the center of the schoolyard. He asked everyone not to get close to the car and prepare for the explosion. Mu Chan refused to get out of the car and would stay there. Everyone couldn't understand why he wanted to rush to his death. Soon after, Mu Chan contacted the masked man. He promised to bring Jai Young to trial again if she was guilty as he said. But he didn't think so. Next, Mu Chan said that he wouldn't leave the car, and if he died here, public opinion would strongly condemn the masked man. Ju Hyun also couldn't understand what Mu Chan wanted to do. She ran there quickly but couldn't make it in time. The car exploded in front of everyone's panic. Ju Hyun collapsed when she saw those images. On this side, her younger sister Ju Min was afraid that Ju Hyun was also in an accident, so she ran to the scene to check. But the police stopped her. After that, Ju Min intended to find a higher place to see the situation. At that moment, she heard her teacher having a transaction with the boys. He wanted to buy the photos of the explosion that the boys took. Ju Min also took the opportunity to take photos of the transaction. The next morning, when Ju Hyun returned home, she saw her younger sister sleeping on the sofa. The TV station was reporting on the explosion last night. The girl Jeon in the car had died. And as for Mu Chan, he was in critical condition and fighting for his life. At that moment, Ju Min woke up and immediately scolded her sister for not answering her calls the night before. Deeply worried about Ju Hyun, she repeatedly asked if she was okay. Ju Hyun urged her sister to reconsider her perspective on the masked figure known as Guido. He wasn't a hero as everyone believed, but a criminal capable of murdering police officers without hesitation. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Mu Chan was unharmed. After the initial explosion that injured him, he had quickly escaped the vehicle. He tried to save Jai Young, but couldn't. Fortunately, Ju Hyun arrived just in time to pull him away before the larger explosion. Disguised as a doctor, Ju Hyun slipped past the police and into Mu Chan's room. She burst in, startling him, then bolted the door. She confronted him about deceiving the nation, but he argued it was psychological manipulation, portraying himself as a victim to sway public opinion against Guido. This was a crucial step in stopping Guido's death penalty initiative. Ju Hyan countered, arguing that if the police couldn't operate within the law, the entire system would be compromised. That evening, Ju Min secretly copied the masked man's video from Ju Hyan's computer. Together with a friend, she started investigating, noticing what sounded like a fire engine siren in the video. Just then, Ju Hyan walked in, startling them both. She scolded her younger sister, a student, for getting involved. However, they soon joined forces to analyze the video, confirming the siren and flashing lights of a fire truck. Ju Min's friend suggested it might be a two-story house. Ju Hyan immediately searched for fires in the past 6 months, finding 3 locations. She then remembered that Seok Ju's house was near one of the fire sites. The 3 of them immediately headed there. Ju Hyan called Mu Chan for backup, but he didn't answer. She texted him, saying she would go in alone, leaving the 2 outside. She entered the dark, dusty house, seemingly unoccupied since Seok Ju's imprisonment. Mu Chan finally saw Ju Hyan's message and changed clothes to join her. Inside, Ju Hyan found the words 13th time scrawled incorrectly on a wall, along with files about Seok Ju's daughter's death. Suddenly, a masked figure attacked her. Outside, the 2 waited, wondering why she hadn't emerged after over 20 minutes. Ju Min wanted to check on her, but her friend stopped her. Just then, Mu Chan arrived. Ju Min was surprised he looked different from how he appeared on television. Mu Chan called Ju Hyan, but she didn't answer. He immediately scaled the gate. Inside, he found Ju Hyan unconscious on the floor. Relieved she was alive, he saw a figure fleeing and gave chase. He attacked, but his injuries hindered him. Fearing exposure, the attacker escaped. Ju Min tried to stop him but failed. The next morning, Mu Chan and Ju Hyan visited Seok Ju in prison. She explained that Guido had used his house as a hideout, collecting information about his family. Seok Ju, however, focused on a faded picture of a rabbit, his daughter's beloved toy. Mu Chan asked about Guido and the death penalty vote, but Seok Ju remained silent. Ju Hyan asked about the writing on the wall. Seok Ju explained his daughter had been stabbed 22 times, and he had done the same to the murderer. But on the 13th stab, he missed. That mark, different from the higher stab wounds, was his. Seok Ju remarked that his 13th stab was a miss, and someone must have been deeply invested in the case to notice it. When Ju Hyan pressed him to recall anyone who might have been so observant, friends, family, or admirers, Seok Ju's answer stunned her. Mu Chan. They had been close, with Mu Chan expressing admiration for Seok Ju and his knowledge of the innocent devil's case. Seok Ju warned Ju Hyan not to trust Mu Chan, who interrupted, dismissing it as nonsense. Seok Ju refused to elaborate, leaving despite Ju Hyan's attempts to stop him. At Gi Chul's funeral home, his foreign wife prepared to send videos to Mu Chan when a masked man entered, strangling her to death. Ju Hyan continued to question Mu Chan about his connection to Seok Ju, but he evaded her inquiries. At that moment, Guido released a new video, highlighting the injured officer in the explosion and revealing footage of Mu Chan unharmed. This shocked both Mu Chan and Ju Hyan. Outside, reporters swarmed, confronting Mu Chan about deceiving the public. The image of Korean police spreading false information went viral, shifting public opinion back in Guido's favor. Mu Chan explained to the press that he feigned his injuries in his eagerness to catch the culprit and apologized, but maintained he would do it again. He argued Guido was manipulating the public into complicity through the death penalty vote. Overwhelmed by the reporters' relentless questions, Mu Chan was rescued by Ju Hyan, who took him to her home. The sudden appearance of Soin, fresh from the shower, startled them all. An argument ensued, with Mu Chan criticizing Ju Hyan, a student, for involving herself in the investigation, and blaming the young man with her for the culprit's escape. Ju Hyan defended their actions, explaining how they led her to Guido's hideout. Mu Chan asked if they remembered anything about the attacker. Ju Min mentioned a smell of gunpowder, leading Mu Chan to suspect the attacker was behind the car bombing and possibly Guido himself. Ju Min, however, still supported Guido, believing many deserved the death penalty, citing her own family's experience with injustice. Seeing a portrait of Ju Hyan's parents, Mu Chan seemed to understand something. Later, Mu Chan told Ju Hyan about his relationship with Seok Ju 8 years prior. They had been close, like brothers. Mu Chan had handled the case of Seok Ju's daughter, who was stabbed dozens of times. Seok-ju was devastated, his cries echoing in Mu-chan's memory. The perpetrator, a juvenile with a history of sexual violence and intellectual disability, was apprehended. He worked for a National Assembly member, suggesting a source for legal support. Despite confessing, the perpetrator was acquitted due to insufficient evidence, leaving both Mu-chan and Seok-ju outraged. Seok-ju laughed maniacally, losing faith in the Korean legal system. That night, he murdered the perpetrator. Mu-chan tried to intervene, but it was too late. He assumed Seok-ju's later resentment stemmed from the perpetrator's release. Ju Hyun disagreed, arguing that as investigators, they couldn't pass judgment. Just then, news arrived of another murder, Gi-chul's wife. Mu-chan rushed to the forensics team, who determined she was strangled. Bruises on her shoulders suggested the perpetrator, likely a male around 1.8 meters tall, had stepped on her for leverage. Mu-chan ruled out Gido, believing the figure he encountered at Seok-ju's house was more muscular and skilled in combat. The warden at Seok-ju's prison contacted Mu-chan, presenting a letter sent to Seok-ju. Among the fan mail, one individual sent monthly letters. The warden offered a stack of these letters in exchange for 100 million won. Mu-chan simply smiled and arrested him for illegal possession of another person's correspondence, confiscating the letters as evidence. Back at the station, Mu-chan asked Ju Hyun to examine the letters' return addresses. They originated from various locations across the country. Ju Hyun suspected Seok-ju's #1 fan was Gido, as the content mirrored his rhetoric. However, a section was missing from each letter, prompting them to wonder where Seok-ju had hidden it. The next morning, Mu-chan and Ju Hyun visited Seok-ju. Ju Hyun questioned him directly while Mu-chan observed via camera. She presented the letters, to which Seok-ju claimed a privacy violation punishable by imprisonment. Ju Hyun countered that she found them in the trash. The letters, signed by Gido as #1 fan, detailed the murders of death penalty vote victims, but with missing pages likely containing information about the next victim. Seok-ju confirmed this, but revealed he had memorized the missing sections before flushing them, forcing the police to negotiate with him. He agreed to cooperate in identifying the mastermind behind the death penalty votes in exchange for his release. Under strict police surveillance, he was released into a heavily monitored room. Jo Dan discovered crucial information on Gi-chul's wife's phone. Using Google Translate, she had drafted a Korean message to Mu-chan, revealing she was threatened by a delivered package on the day her husband died. Checking security footage from Gi-chul's house, Mu-chan saw a masked figure resembling the one from Seok-ju's house. He ordered a search for delivery personnel, focusing on those with connections to the death penalty votes. With the next death penalty vote looming, the team worked to identify the potential victim. Investigators contacted individuals at high risk, warning them to be cautious. Meanwhile, Ju Hyun and Seok-ju narrowed down potential suspects connected to Seok-ju from 8 years prior: colleagues, neighbors, friends, and classmates. Ju Hyun presented Gi-chul's wife's case, an anomaly seemingly unrelated to Woo-teek. They sifted through potential suspects until nightfall. Ju Hyun inquired about Woo-teek's parents. Seok-ju explained they were a driver and housekeeper for his neighbors, often sharing food with him, taking pity on his single parenthood. They even drove his daughter to school when she was late. The families had been close, making their son's crime even more shocking. Their employer was a newly appointed congresswoman named Jae Young. Her frail younger son, Yun Seong, was often accompanied by Woo-teek, who carried his bag. Yun Seong, Seok-ju recalled, used to stare intently at his daughter. On one side, Gido initiated the third death penalty vote. This time, he wouldn't reveal the victim's identity, only disclosing their alias, Captain O. This individual was accused of repeated sexual assaults while serving in the military, leading to the suicide of 2nd Lieutenant Lim and the devastation of her family. Upon receiving this information, the police began searching for individuals with the surname O. They identified 5 suspects, 2 of whom were unreachable. Just then, a man called the police station. He identified himself as Ogumi and claimed to be the target of the death penalty vote. His reasoning stemmed from a delivered package containing a photo of him with 2nd Lieutenant Lim. Upon receiving this information, Mo Tran and his team immediately set out to find him. He instructed Ju Hyun to release Seok-ju to act as a tracker and head to the church. Meanwhile, Mu Chan was on his way to the church where Ogumi was seeking refuge. At that moment, he received another call, this time from the hospital. The caller, Dr. Oh Young-ho, confessed to being the Captain Oh who had served in the military. He recounted the crimes he committed against 2nd Lieutenant Lim. Mid-conversation, Oh Young-ho suddenly fell silent. Sensing something amiss, Mu Chan turned his car around and headed towards the hospital Oh Young-ho had mentioned. Simultaneously, Ju Hyan and Seok Ju also redirected to the hospital. Ju Hyan wore a mask to avoid recognition. She inquired about Dr. Oh Young-ho's whereabouts, but no one knew where he was. She then located his room and knocked, calling out, "Oh Young-ho." Jae-hoon, a young boy inside, moved to open the door, but Oh Young-ho struck him. Still suspicious, Oh Young-ho demanded to see Ju Hyan's identification. She presented her police badge, but he remained unconvinced. Oh Young-ho insisted on checking the IDs of everyone outside. Complying with his demand, she proceeded to do so. Just then, the death penalty vote concluded, reaching 72% approval. Guido revealed Oh Young-ho's identity to the public. It turned out he had received a reduced sentence thanks to his family's influence within a large hospital. He had changed his name and was brazenly working as a doctor. The hospital staff were shocked to learn the truth about Dr. Oh Young-ho. Guido declared that he would carry out the execution on behalf of the people, punishing this demon. While Ju Hyan checked IDs, Seok Ju recognized someone among the crowd and alerted Ju Hyan. The man, upon being recognized, fled. Ju Hyan immediately gave chase. The prison guard noticed a strange box under the seat where the man had been sitting. Curiosity piqued, he moved to open it, but Seok Ju intervened, urging him to stay away. Moments later, the box exploded, causing panic and chaos as people scrambled to escape the hospital. Seizing the opportunity, Seok Ju also made his escape, brushing past a bomb disposal technician. He seemed to recognize the technician. Immediately afterward, the bomb disposal technician knocked on Oh Young-ho's door, urging him to evacuate quickly. As Oh Young-ho reached for the door, Mu Chan called, instructing him to stay put, regardless of the explosion or the arrival of the police. Growing impatient, the technician pumped gas into the room, suffocating both occupants. Meanwhile, Ju Hyan pursued the delivery man, but he fought back. Just as he was about to kill her, Seok Ju arrived, despite being handcuffed, and overpowered him, choking him into unconsciousness. Fearing Seok Ju would kill the man, Ju Hyan intervened and handcuffed him. Overcome by the gas, Oh Young-ho finally opened the door, using Jae-hoon as a hostage. This prevented the technician, now revealed as the assassin, from attacking. He lowered his weapon under Oh Young-ho's threat. As the assassin reached for the gun, Jae-hoon broke free, and the assassin lunged, subduing Oh Young-ho. Just as he was about to finish him off, Mu Chan arrived, gun in hand. However, surrounded by flammable gas, he couldn't risk firing. He tried to persuade the assassin to surrender, but it was futile. Ju Hyan and Seok Ju arrived on the scene as well. The assassin challenged Mu Chan, asking if he truly wanted to save a scumbag like Oh Young-ho, considering his heinous crimes. Mu Chan admitted his desire to kill Oh Young-ho himself, but insisted on letting him live a life worse than death punishment through the legal system. Suddenly, Seok Ju smashed the fire suppression system. Mu Chan fired at the assassin, who simultaneously attacked Oh Young-ho. The assassin was only slightly injured, but Oh Young-ho was killed. Outside, Mu Chan reprimanded Seok Ju for his reckless actions, but Seok Ju retorted, hadn't Mu Chan wanted to kill the bastard too? Mu Chan moved to strike him, but Ju Hyan intervened, wanting to get Seok Ju away before the press arrived. The next morning, Mu Chan interrogated the assassin. The man had no ID and had self-inflicted burns on all 10 fingertips. Mu Chan questioned his connection to 2nd Lieutenant Lim and whether he was Seok Ju's #1 fan, but the man remained silent. He claimed to be Guido, the mastermind, but Mu Chan knew this was impossible. He was certain there were accomplices and that the real Guido was still out there. After DNA analysis, Mu Chan learned the assassin's real name was Jin Woo, 2nd Lieutenant Lim's fiancé. He had faked his death years ago and assumed a new identity. The scar on his neck was likely from removing a military identification number. Meanwhile, Ju Hyan took Seok Ju back to his house and removed his handcuffs. Seok Ju revisited his belongings, reminders of his beloved daughter. Memories of her flooded his mind. her loss remained a constant ache. Mu Chan met with his superior, furious that the special investigation team was being disbanded. His superior argued that Guido had been caught, but Mu Chan insisted that Jin Woo was not Guido and that the real culprit remained free. Reviewing the hospital security footage, Choi noticed something unusual. He wondered why a young man had arrived at the hospital but hadn't exited his car. He immediately shared this with Mu Chan, showing him a photo of Congressman Minion's family. Her son had been at the hospital under suspicious circumstances. This triggered a memory for Mu Chan. He sought out Seok Ju, believing that his #1 fan would contact him again. The real Guido was still at large, despite his superior's belief otherwise. Mu Chan planned to feign closure on the case and set a trap. He was confident Guido would send Seok Ju another letter. Seok Ju reproached Mu Chan for a similar trap set 8 years prior. DNA from 2 individuals had been found on his daughter's stuffed animal, one belonging to Wu Teek, the other unidentified. He believed Mu Chan knew the other person's identity but lacked the confidence to accuse the accomplice. Mu Chan had suspected Congressman Jai Young's son, remembering the boy's smile when Seok Ju's daughter's body was removed. But he had kept this from Seok Ju, partly due to insufficient evidence, partly out of fear of Seok Ju's potential retaliation. Seok Ju agreed to be bait to catch Guido. However, he warned Mu Chan that if he failed again like 8 years ago, he would never forgive him. Outside, Ju Hyan listened to the conversation through a camera, simultaneously pursuing her own leads. Mu Chan whispered something to Seok Ju, which Ju Hyan couldn't hear, infuriating her. The next morning, while transferring Seok Ju back to prison, Ju Hyan questioned his repeated accusations of Mu Chan being Guido. Seok Ju explained that at the end of each semester, he told his students never to believe everything he said, encouraging them to seek their own answers. Ju Hyan was perplexed by his cryptic response. Mu Chan brought 2nd Lieutenant Lim's father to meet Jin Woo. The grieving father reproached his would-be son-in-law for his foolish actions. Lim wouldn't want to see this. She'd want you to live. Jin Woo apologized for his reckless behavior. The 2 men wept, moving even Mu Chan. Jin Woo then confessed to having an accomplice, revealing everything. He and his accomplice communicated solely online and had never met in person. The accomplice handled the technical aspects while Jin Woo carried out the physical acts. Mu Chan questioned Jin Woo's involvement in the death penalty votes, wondering why he didn't just seek revenge on Johns directly. Jin Woo explained they didn't kill indiscriminately. Their targets were carefully chosen, those whose existence harmed society, as evidenced by the voting results. He admitted to 3 murders and identified his accomplice as Seok Ju's #1 fan, the one who revered a man currently in prison. Mu Chan inquired about the accomplice's relationship with Seok Ju. Jin Woo speculated he might be a former student who had once vowed to destroy the person Seok Ju cherished most. The police investigated Yun Seong, Congressman Jai Young's son, Mu Chan's prime suspect in the 8-year-old case. Yun Seong, now going by Min Soo, was a middle school teacher in Seoul. Besides their families being neighbors, Min Soo's mother had attended Seok Ju's final trial, indicating her familiarity with the phrase, innocent demon. The usually composed teacher Min Soo clung to his mother like a child as they watched the news about the arrest in the death penalty vote case. Jai Young remarked on its similarity to Seok Ju's daughter's case, then turned to her son and asked, "Why did you kill again?" Before Seok Ju's daughter's murder, Min Soo had been an ardent fan. Jai Young had even taken him to meet Seok Ju for an autograph. The frail boy had a passion for law and justice. During their visit, Seok Ju's daughter, Na Rae, appeared, capturing Min Soo's intense and unsettling attention. He often watched Seok Ju's family from their house across the street. One day, Na Rae's beloved dog went missing. Seok Ju visited the So-min residence, asking if Min Soo had seen the dog, as someone had seen him leaving Seok Ju's property. Min Soo denied any involvement and suggested checking the security footage. Seok Ju was surprised to discover his camera had malfunctioned. Min Soo's parents arrived home, annoyed by Seok Ju's presence, his father complaining about the disturbance to Min Soo's studies. Min Soo reiterated to his parents that he hadn't seen the dog. Seok Ju returned home without another word. Unbeknownst to them, Ju Hyan overheard everything via the camera, fueling her own investigation. Mu Chan whispered something inaudible to Seok Ju, further frustrating her. The next day, Ju Hyan returned Seok-ju to prison, questioning his persistent belief that Mu-chan was Guido. He reiterated his teaching philosophy of encouraging independent thought, leaving Ju Hyan even more confused. Min-soo's father immediately confronted him about the missing dog. After discovering its buried remains in their backyard, he lashed out at his son, recognizing this wasn't his first transgression. He feared the repercussions if Seok-ju discovered the truth. Jae-young, inexplicably, turned her anger on Woo-teek, the family's servant boy, blaming him for the incident. Woo-teek, conditioned to accept blame for Min-soo, apologized profusely as his parents watched helplessly while he was beaten. Later, Min-soo returned to feign remorse to Woo-teek, secretly plotting to eliminate Seok-ju's daughter. The following morning, Na-rae, while searching for her dog, was lured away by someone calling her name. Shortly after, she was found murdered. At the crime scene, Mu-chan noticed Min-soo's cryptic smile, raising his suspicions. However, the corrupt Korean police force arrested Seok-ju for questioning. Dismissing Seok-ju's kidnapping theory due to the lack of a ransom demand, they accused him of murdering his own daughter, citing witnesses who saw her leave the car with him. During the interrogation, Seok-ju was bombarded with accusatory questions about his strict discipline, the location of the body in a blind spot without security cameras, all implying his guilt. He remained silent. Mu-chan arrived to take over the interrogation from Choi, advising Seok-ju to hire a lawyer, but Seok-ju insisted on handling it himself. Mu-chan presented videos of Seok-ju circulating online, showing him interacting with female students, now used to vilify him and support the accusations. Seok-ju wept in despair as his reputation was destroyed by online trolls. Mu-chan empathized with his plight. Seok-ju's house was vandalized, his dignity as a professor trampled upon. Mu-chan, still determined to find the real killer, searched Seok-ju's house for any shred of evidence. Seok-ju, however, wanted the investigation to end, his grief over Na-rae's death outweighing the false accusations. Mu-chan urged him to stay strong, reaffirming his belief in Seok-ju's innocence and his admiration for him since his first day at the police academy. He reminded Seok-ju that he had called him his #1 fan and pleaded with him to work together to catch the real culprit. Reviewing the crime scene evidence, Seok-ju noticed a missing stuffed animal that usually hung on Na-rae's backpack. The stuffed animal belonged to an orphan boy whom Seok-ju was considering adopting. The two children had planned to meet on the day of the murder, and the boy still felt guilty for arriving late. Mu-chan immediately went to the location where Na-rae was last seen, hoping to obtain dashcam footage from a passing cycling group. The footage showed Na-rae with Woo-teek, who knew the dog's whereabouts and was leading her to it. Seok-ju suspected Min-soo had taken the dog, convinced that whoever took Na-rae's stuffed animal was the killer. He gave Mu-chan the matching stuffed animal as evidence. Woo-teek was summoned to the police station for questioning, the frightened boy pleading to go home. The police observed his every move. His parents, employed by the Min family, watched anxiously as the Min's lawyer intervened to secure Woo-teek's release. Mu-chan was suspicious of the Min's intervention, wondering what their motive was. Immediately afterward, Mu-chan went to the chairman's family. He told Mrs. Jae-young that Woo-teek was now the prime suspect. He asked why her family had spent a large sum of money hiring a lawyer for Woo-teek. Mrs. Jae-young said it was simply out of pity for the boy's family situation. At the same time, Yun-seong was also present. Mu-chan took the opportunity to ask him about his relationship with Woo-teek. However, Yun-seong claimed that he wasn't close to Woo-teek and asked Mu-chan not to believe anything Woo-teek said. With his sharp eyes, Mu-chan understood that what he was saying was a lie. Mrs. Jae-young didn't want him bothering her son, so she politely asked him to leave. She then had someone follow Mu-chan's every move, while also ensuring that Mr. Seok-ju's video wasn't taken down until the end of the trial. The next day, Yun-seong went to the police station on his own. He came to tell Mu-chan a story about Woo-teek. On the night of the murder, Woo-teek had taken Na-rae's backpack somewhere. Yun-seong seemed to want to accuse Woo-teek of being the murderer. But Mu-chan wasn't easily swayed. He still implicitly believed that the boy in front of him was also involved. Mu-chan asked about the wound on Yun-seong's hand. He said that he got it while helping his uncle with gardening. But clearly, this answer wasn't convincing. In truth, The wound was caused by Jumin's carelessness while murdering Na Rei. It was he who brought back the backpack, not Wu Teek. Mu Chan angrily went to Wu Teek and beat him. He wanted Wu Teek to confess everything, knowing that the boy hadn't acted alone. In his fear, Wu Teek mentioned Yun Xiong's name. That was the name Mu Chan most wanted to hear at that moment. Before Wu Teek's trial, the prosecution argued that he had an accomplice. The evidence that was later discovered contained the DNA of a third person. The prosecutor requested the court to collect Yun Xiong's DNA for comparison. The judge agreed, but the test results had to be obtained discreetly. That day, Wu Teek's trial took place. Mu Chan testified about the third person's blood found on the teddy bear. But the lawyer asked him why the evidence was found several days later. Mu Chan replied that the crime scene and where the body was found were two different locations. That was why the evidence was found later. However, the lawyer didn't think so. He took out another teddy bear, identical to Na Rei's, and questioned Mu Chan. Was he sure that the teddy bear he found actually belonged to the girl? On the contrary, he claimed that the teddy bear he was holding was Na Rei's and that it had no fingerprints other than those of the girl and her family. Next, he asked the judge to check which teddy bear was Na Rei's real one. Although they looked very similar, the eyes of the two teddy bears were different colors. The judge then decided to dismiss the evidence Mu Chan found because it had different colored eyes than the teddy bear in the photo. Mu Chan stood up and revealed that Wu Teek had confessed to not acting alone. But Wu Teek immediately denied it and claimed that Mu Chan had hit him. The bruises on Wu Teek's body were also revealed, surprising everyone in the courtroom. At the end of the trial, the judge ruled Wu Teek not guilty due to lack of concrete evidence. Hearing this, Mu Chan and Mr. C were stunned. As he went outside, Mu Chan was suddenly slapped by Mrs. Jai Young. She warned him never to touch her son again. Mu Chan could only resign himself to helplessness as he watched Wu Teek's release. His composure shattered, but Mr. Seok Ju intervened before Mu Chan could do something reckless. He seemed all too familiar with the corrupt legal system of the time. Mu Chan, however, remained determined to find justice. That same day, Mr. Seok Ju ran into Wu Teek while he was taking out the trash. He bowed his head, apologizing for what the police had put the boy through. Wu Teek considered Mr. Seok Ju a good person, and he always gave gifts to good people. He pulled out a recording of Na Rei's voice from before she was murdered. The little girl's voice repeated, "I miss you, Daddy." This only fueled Mr. Seok Ju's rage. Returning home, he covered everything in his daughter's room and began to plot his revenge. That night, while Wu Teek was buying fried bananas, Mr. Seok Ju appeared and dragged him into a deserted alley. There, he stabbed Wu Teek to death, inflicting dozens of wounds. Soon after, Mr. Seok Ju was charged with 2 counts of murder, his daughter's and Wu Teek's. Yun Xiong was present, wearing a sinister smile. Mu Chan witnessed the whole scene. At that very moment, the police informed him of another tragedy. Wu Teek's parents had committed suicide. This solidified Mu Chan's suspicions, but he was powerless to act. Back in the present, Yun Xiong's family had returned, and Yun Xiong was summoned to the police station for questioning. Mu Chan brought up the events of 8 years ago. Yun Xiong also couldn't forget the detective who had always been on his tail. After reminiscing, Mu Chan got to the point. He asked Yun Xiong if he had killed Na Rei 8 years prior. But Yun Xiong remained silent, offering only the same chilling smile from 8 years ago. Meanwhile, Jai Hoon was helping Ju Hyan hack into Yun Xiong's computer. While recovering deleted files, Jai Hoon stumbled upon a video of the school explosion. The footage captured the moment Ju Hyan saved Mu Chan from the burning car. Seeing this, Ju Hyan realized who teacher Yun Xiong truly was. She immediately informed Mu Chan and Mr. Seok Ju. Now Mu Chan was certain that Yun Xiong was the #1 fan, the orchestrator of the death penalty votes known as Guido. But Mr. Seok Ju couldn't understand his motive. This man, supposedly his daughter's killer, was now creating polls seeking justice. Mu Chan asked Mr. Seok Ju about the boy he had wanted to adopt 8 years ago. He recounted the story of how they met. While Mr. Seok Ju and Na Rei were walking home, they encountered the boy in the rain. Na Rei had offered him her umbrella, and all 3 returned home together. In the following days, the boy became like a member of Mr. Seok Ju's family. That fateful night, the boy witnessed Mr. Seok-ju murder Woo-teek. The boy's heart froze, as did Mr. Seok-ju's. He never saw the orphan again. But Mr. Seok-ju didn't know that the boy he had wanted to adopt was Jae-hoon, the kind, tech-savvy student he knew now. Gido's next targets were death row inmates. He argued that keeping them alive wasted taxpayers' money. The police were also hunting Gido, trying to determine who would be the next victim of his deadly polls. Yun Seong wasn't acting alone. He clearly had numerous accomplices. The next day, as Yun Seong left his house, the police had someone tailing him as usual. He stopped at a coffee shop and then went to school. Nothing out of the ordinary. Meanwhile, Moo Chan received news that more video footage had been collected from the funeral home. It confirmed that the masked figure was the one who murdered Gi Chol's foreign wife. Moo Chan doubted that he killed her with a rubber band. It was likely a jump rope. Elsewhere, Ju Hyun was trying to prevent her younger sister from going to school. Knowing Yun Seong's true identity, she feared he would harm her. Ju Hyun advised her sister to take a few days off, promising to hire a private tutor. But Seok-ju's younger sister, determined, refused to listen, afraid of losing attendance points. A large crowd wearing dog masks gathered at the prison to protest. They demanded the government reinstate the death penalty. Gido's online rhetoric had brainwashed them. Their sense of justice now had only one name, Gido. They wanted the prisoners inside sentenced to death. They argued that imprisoning them wasted state funds, money that came from taxpayers. Dog masks were now being sold everywhere. Min-soo was genuinely thrilled by this spectacle. As he returned home, Moo Chan was across the street, monitoring his every move. Moo Chan wanted the death penalty targets narrowed down, focusing only on those connected to Min-soo, and he immediately relayed this information to the prison. Meanwhile, a dog-masked individual drove to an apartment complex, stealthily descending to the basement. Inside a room, two other masked figures waited. All three were Gido's underlings. This time, Gido had summoned them to issue a death sentence for a prisoner named Chan Hun, an elderly man nearing the end of his life. Gido would collude with a female doctor in the prison. The pills she provided would induce a fatal heart attack. Killing him was not only revenge for the number 2 masked figure, but also to save taxpayers' money on useless individuals. After Gido ended the call, the number 3 masked figure asked the others if they knew Gido's identity. But the others argued he was breaking the group's rules. Knowing each other's identities was too dangerous. Angered, number 3 stormed off. He seemed to oppose these death sentences. The next morning, Moo Chan and his team visited Jae Young's family to arrest Min-soo, the prime suspect in the murder of Gi Chul's wife. Mr. Jo presented the security footage showing Min-soo at the funeral home. Jae Young vehemently protested her son's arrest but couldn't stop Moo Chan. She immediately called her lawyer, demanding Min-soo's release that day. Back at the police station, Seok-ju himself interrogated Min-soo. Moo Chan knew Min-soo was Seok-ju's biggest fan. Letting them meet was the best way to observe Min-soo's reactions. As usual, Min-soo gave Seok-ju his unsettling smile. After a brief exchange of greetings, Seok-ju got straight to the point. "You're my biggest fan, aren't you? You're Gido, the one orchestrating the death sentences, aren't you?" Min-soo burst into tears, then laughed maniacally. He replied, "If I were Gido, do you think you'd be safe?" Seok-ju, enraged, grabbed Min-soo by the collar. Moo Chan immediately intervened to separate them. At the same time, Ju Hyun received a call from Jo Dan. He'd discovered an unusual spike in electricity usage at Min-soo's house. It seemed illogical to think Min-soo was Gido, considering he was currently at the police station. Just then, Gido went live again to announce the next target of the death vote. It appeared that student Jae-hoon was also involved in the voting process. This time, the target shocked everyone, the person who coerced confessions and fabricated false evidence. It was none other than Inspector Kim An. Mr. Choi immediately mobilized everyone to provide Kim An with strict protection. Another man came forward to accuse Moo Chan of fabricating false evidence that led to his wrongful imprisonment for 10 years, a decade that had upended and devastated his life. Gido called Moo Chan a guiltless devil. The vote was about to begin. Meanwhile, the female doctor was about to give the elderly inmate a pill. Suddenly, Jae-hoon demanded she stop. accusing her of betraying the group. She reluctantly discarded the pill, unable to proceed. Jae-hoon then went to the central control room. Videos denouncing Mu Chan had been released. His worst qualities were dissected and amplified in an attempt to manipulate public opinion. Jae-hoon quickly disconnected the servers, shutting down all the systems. The death vote was subsequently rendered inconclusive. In the following days, Mu Chan was temporarily put on leave. Everyone wanted him to rest and let things calm down. Ju Hyun visited Mu Chan at his home, which was covered in images related to the cases, particularly the case of Mr. Seok Ju's daughter and the death vote. Ju Hyun scolded him for not using the computer at the office. She found his current setup messy and disorganized. Mu Chan wanted to review Min Soo's recorded testimony. Also, Jin Woo was being transferred to prison today, and he wanted Ju Hyun to closely monitor him for any contact with Min Soo. To apprehend Min Soo, they needed proof that he was Gido. Mu Chan remained adamant that Min Soo was Mr. Seok Ju's biggest fan. He wanted her to re-examine the letters Mr. Seok Ju had sent him. Ju Hyun had a question. When Min Soo was abroad, Mr. Seok Ju received a letter every time Min Soo wired money. She suspected he'd hired someone to send the letters. She was also curious about how the assault case from 5 years ago was connected to the current situation. Mu Chan believed the perpetrator in both cases was the same person. Ju Hyun disagreed. The assault case was murder, while this case was a death vote pursuing justice. She still felt something was amiss about Min Soo being Gido. Ju Hyun returned to review the letters exchanged between Mr. Seok Ju and Min Soo 5 years prior. She seemed to realize something. Meanwhile, Mu Chan pieced together the details: the death of Mr. Seok Ju's daughter, Min Soo's strange behavior, his conversations with Mr. Seok Ju in prison, and his own conversation with Min Soo the other day. It seemed Mu Chan had figured out who Gido was, the person behind the death vote. Ju Hyun visited Mr. Seok Ju with the letters in hand. She reproached him for staying silent when he knew who his biggest fan was. He had gone crazy when he received the first letter from Min Soo 5 years ago. But why wasn't that letter among these? Ju Hyun desperately wanted to know where that first letter was now and what its contents were. At the same time, Ju Hyun received a call from Mu Chan. He revealed that Mr. Seok Ju was actually Gido. This left her stunned. Hearing a noise outside, Mr. Seok Ju quickly embraced Ju Hyun as a truck crashed into the building. Luckily, neither of them was hurt. The truck was there to help him escape from prison. Ju Hyun could only watch helplessly. As soon as Mr. Seok Ju escaped, Ju Hyun called Mu Chan and the police. Upon receiving the news, Mu Chan tracked the truck's location. Ju Hyun also quickly followed the truck. But when they reached a tunnel, they were suddenly caught in a traffic jam. Mr. Seok Ju's truck was now blocking the road. 2 motorcycles suddenly emerged from the back of the truck and sped away. Mu Chan fired his gun at them, but couldn't stop them. Mr. Seok Ju and the driver successfully escaped. Back at the police station, the chief was furious. He blamed Ju Hyun for letting Mr. Seok Ju get away. Mu Chan tried to defend Ju Hyun, but this only enraged the chief further. The two argued, and the chief told Mu Chan he didn't want to see him in the office again. The police kept Mr. Seok Ju's escape from the press. Meanwhile, Mr. Seok Ju and the prison doctor returned to their secret base. The equipment inside had been destroyed by Number 5. He tried to access the server, but it was blocked. At that moment, another member of the group arrived. They both quickly put on their masks to conceal their identities. The other member was furious when he learned that Number 5 had betrayed the group. Number 5 had stolen the program and wiped the server data. Mr. Seok Ju wanted the group to change their original plan. He then tried to recover the lost data. Meanwhile, Mu Chan went to Mr. Seok Ju's house. He was checking to see if he had returned. Surprisingly, Ju Hyun had the same idea and went there too. Ju Hyun couldn't believe that Min Soo wasn't Gido after all. She still wanted to search his house, believing there might be some evidence. However, this was impossible as the police had no probable cause. Mu Chan pulled out a photo of Na Rae and the boy Mr. Seok Ju wanted to adopt. Mr. Seok Ju had said he lost contact with the boy. Mu Chan still wanted to find him. They were both unaware that the boy was actually Jae-hoon. Jae-hoon visited Jo Hin-soing's younger sister, scolding him for not replying to her messages. They seemed to be close friends, perhaps even more than friends. Despite their closeness, Jae-hoon kept his family life a secret. He wouldn't even tell Ju-min where he lived. On his way home, Jae-hoon saw a familiar figure. He excused himself from Ju-min, saying his father was picking him up. Jae-hoon ran and hugged his father. It was Mr. Seok-ju. While he was in prison, Jae-hoon had been handling all the technology aspects. He felt partially responsible for No. 5's sabotage. But Mr. Seok-ju said that no one was to blame. They had simply chosen the wrong person from the start. The three of them then went to Hae-jin's house to hide, as the police were actively searching for Mr. Seok-ju. Meanwhile, No. 5 was meeting with Min-soo. No. 5 felt that everyone in the group seemed to know each other except for him. He also had no idea who the true No. 1 fan was. He offered to give Min-soo valuable information in exchange for money and revenge. At that moment, Min-soo received news that Mr. Seok-ju had escaped. This pleased him greatly. The next morning, Jae-hoon entered Min-soo's office. He stole data from his computer. By the time Min-soo returned, Jae-hoon had completed his task. Min-soo didn't have the slightest suspicion about the seemingly innocent student. Ju Hyun visited the prison where Seok-ju had been living for years. She was quite surprised that his accommodations were more like a resort. It seemed everyone inside was part of Seok-ju's network. Ju Hyun took particular notice of Dr. Hae-jin. Seok-ju regularly met with her during his routine checkups. Unfortunately, she wasn't working that day. Moo-chan visited the orphanage to inquire about the boy in the photo. The woman there clearly remembered Seok-ju's intention to adopt the boy, but his daughter's death had prevented it. Shortly afterward, the boy was adopted by another kind family. Outside, Moo-chan received a call from Ju Hyun. She had searched Seok-ju's room but found nothing. She was also curious how he could orchestrate the votes from inside prison. Moo-chan suggested he might have done it through friends or close contacts inside. Ju Hyun also mentioned a female doctor who had been treating Seok-ju for years. Significantly, the student Captain Oh had taken hostage was her grandson. Ju Hyun felt something was suspicious about the doctor. There were too many coincidences. That very evening, Moo-chan went to see Dr. Hae-jin. As he entered, he glimpsed a figure on the stairs. Moo-chan asked her about Seok-ju's history of pneumothorax. Did she think he would visit a hospital for a checkup? Dr. Hae-jin believed that if the condition hadn't recurred, he wouldn't go to a hospital. He rarely spoke about himself, so she couldn't say who he would contact after escaping. Meanwhile, Seok-ju was hiding upstairs. Moo-chan, unable to glean any more information, excused himself. Outside, he noticed 3 umbrellas by the door, deepening his suspicions. The following morning, Ju Hyun and Jo Dan disguised themselves as students. They aimed to catch the No. 1 fan. In a group chat, someone claiming to be the No. 1 Gido was arranging a meeting with like-minded individuals at the park. Ju Hyun spotted a suspicious girl and apprehended her. The girl turned out to be a classmate of Ju Hyun's younger sister. Checking her phone, they confirmed she had arranged to meet 2 people there. However, she denied being the No. 1 Gido. A mysterious person had given her a note with the instructions to meet on a nice day. She was simply following instructions. From afar, Jae-hoon was filming the scene. He quickly left to avoid being identified. Back at the office, Ju Hyun examined the note. She couldn't understand the meaning of a nice day. She checked the weather app and saw sunny weather predicted all week. She asked Jo Dan to check Jin Woo's phone for weather apps. Not only did he have one, but he had 2. Ju Hyun suddenly stood up and yelled, having discovered something. Meanwhile, a private television station was reporting on the death penalty vote. Seizing the opportunity, Ju Hyun and the investigative team arrived. She wanted to reveal the truth behind Gido and the death penalty vote to the public, hoping her words would be broadcast nationwide. Everyone had 2 weather apps on their phones. One was a hidden app Gido had illicitly installed. Moo-chan reasoned that basic apps like weather and maps updated automatically. Gido exploited this to infiltrate people's personal space. Delete it now. Gido is hacking our phones. He's using us to legitimize mass murder. Min Soo, hearing the news, flew into a rage. He swore to kill Mu Chan by any means necessary. Mrs. Jai Young urged her son to calm down as it wasn't over yet. She promised they would continue doing whatever Min Soo pleased. It seemed murder and crime were what truly excited and satisfied Min Soo. That night, Guido addressed the public once again. He sensed that the people's faith in him had dwindled over the past few days. Yet, the surveillance and upholding of justice in this society continued. He considered every request and call to action sent his way. This time, the subject of the vote was the Chun Zit Gang, a group who had ruined countless families through real estate scams. As usual, the vote would begin immediately. Simultaneously, Chun was being apprehended by men wearing dog masks. Leading the capture was Number 5, the very person Guido had betrayed. Number 5 had also initiated this particular vote. After 53% of the people voted for Chun Zit's execution, Number 5 drew a knife and stabbed Chun mercilessly. The following morning, the police arrived at the scene. The voter turnout remained high as many people hadn't deleted the app. It seemed that killing had become a game for them. Detective Choi wanted to start the investigation by interviewing Chun Zit's close associates. Meanwhile, Ju Hyun and Jo Dan posed as network repairmen. They knew that Min Soo's house consistently showed unusual power consumption and hosted strange IP addresses. After distracting the housekeeper, Ju Hyun slipped into Min Soo's room. At first glance, the room appeared normal. However, upon checking the Wi-Fi connection, she discovered numerous IP addresses. Ju Hyun suspected a hidden room nearby. She picked up a cup from a cabinet drawer, and suddenly, a hidden door revealed itself. Just as she suspected, inside was a secret room housing a massive computer system. As Ju Hyun accessed the server, the G symbol appeared. At that same moment, the door slammed shut. Ju Hyun opened a video file on the computer. She was shocked to witness Na Rae crying for help and repeatedly calling for her father. Standing before the terrified girl was the despicable Min Soo. He even instructed Woo Teek to film the horrifying scene. Ju Hyun immediately sent the audio of Na Rae's pleas to Mu Chan. He couldn't hide his emotions upon hearing the little girl's voice. Mu Chan called Ju Hyun, and she showed him the secret room via video call. She believed this evidence would be enough to convict Min Soo. At that very moment, Min Soo arrived home. As he was about to enter, he received a call from his mother. She urged him to flee immediately, revealing that the police had evidence linking him to Na Rae's murder. Without a word, Min Soo got into his car and drove away. The informant who tipped off Mrs. Jai Young was none other than Detective Choi. It turned out he had been in her pocket all along. Mrs. Jai Young couldn't understand why Seok Ju was complicating matters, as his target was only her son. Detective Choi speculated that Seok Ju might be seeking revenge on her family, as Mrs. Jai Young had done something similar to him years ago. He was certain that Min Soo would be the next target for execution. Therefore, he advised Mrs. Jai Young to bring her son to the police station to confess. Only then could his life be spared from Seok Ju's wrath. It was the only option left. Shortly after, Min Soo arrived at the police station. He held the recording in his hand and confessed to murdering Na Rae. He wore a defiant smirk, showing no sign of fear. Meanwhile, Ju Hyun was busy copying data from Min Soo's computer when she encountered a problem. The server was reformatting, wiping all the data. Ju Hyun tried to recover the information, but it was no use. Without the original files, it would be difficult to convict the villain. Following the scene in the video, Mu Chan and his team arrived at an abandoned building. This could be the initial crime scene where Min Soo murdered Na Rae. Mr. Choi was also present. He raised his voice, saying they needed at least one piece of solid evidence. The video Ju Hyun recorded at Min Soo's house was obtained illegally. The original file was missing, and the recording Min Soo provided wasn't clear enough to identify the perpetrator. Mu Chan wondered why Min Soo would confess at this time, unaware that Mr. Choi had been working for Miss Jai Young all along. Meanwhile, as Mr. Seok Ju returned home, Jai Hoon rushed in. He informed his adoptive father that Min Soo had confessed. Hearing this, Mr. Seok Ju seemed stunned. His plan to avenge his daughter was gradually falling apart. After a lengthy investigation, the police concluded that Mr. Seok Ju was behind the death penalty vote. He had planned it for 5 years, ever since he learned Min Soo was an accomplice in his daughter Gido's case. First, Jin helped Mr. Seok-ju. He led the killings of those voted for execution. The second accomplice was Dong-gu, the driver who kidnapped Mr. Chun. He worked as a driver for a long time solely to observe the targets of the vote. However, trouble started when Moo-chan was included in the death penalty vote. The source of the broadcast that day was found on Min Soo's personal computer. They couldn't understand why Min Soo and Mr. Seok-ju shared the same goal in this situation. Mr. Choi believed that Gi-chul and Jin were both poisoned. It seemed someone with medical expertise was helping Mr. Seok-ju. Moo-chan immediately thought of Miss Hai-jin. He urged everyone not to overlook this suspicious doctor. In addition, there was another mysterious figure the police hadn't been able to identify. This person created and distributed the voting app. He had to be a computer whiz, a tech genius, but no one could have guessed that this person was Jae-hoon. That evening, Mr. Seok-ju deliberately approached the TV station's female anchor. Seeing him, she tried to flee, but the door was locked. There, he revealed himself as Gido. He wanted her to broadcast the program live with him again. This would guarantee high ratings for the station. She couldn't refuse the offer. Shortly afterward, Mr. Seok-ju appeared at the TV station himself. His appearance stunned the audience. Mr. Seok-ju apologized for hacking into everyone's phones and installing the voting app. But he claimed he hadn't used the information to sell their personal data. He announced that the next vote would take place in a week. The target was the high school teacher wearing a mask, a serial killer who had escaped justice due to being the son of a congressman. Immediately, Ju Hyun went to see Min Soo. She gave him an emergency communication device. She knew Min Soo was Gido's next target. He could be attacked at any time, and the police would likely be unable to anticipate it. Meanwhile, Moo-chan reviewed Miss Hai-jin's profile. Notably, she had adopted Jae-hoon years ago. Coincidentally, Mr. Seok-ju had also wanted to adopt Jae-hoon. The strange relationship between these three people made Moo-chan suspicious. The pink umbrella he saw at Miss Hai-jin's house was the same one young Jae-hoon had left behind when he witnessed Mr. Seok-ju murdering Woo-teek. Putting everything together, he was certain that Jae-hoon was the mysterious person the police were looking for. The reason the death penalty vote began at 10 p.m. was because that was when Jae-hoon finished school. The person who almost became Mr. Seok-ju's adopted son was the one helping him. Ju Hyun was astonished to hear what Moo-chan had discovered. The police kept a constant watch over Min Soo. Meanwhile, someone brought him his heart medication. After taking it, Min Soo felt uneasy. He noticed the symbol of G on the bottom of the cup. Before he could react, Min Soo collapsed onto the floor. He was immediately rushed to a nearby hospital. A short while later, someone disguised as a doctor entered. They swiftly incapacitated the officer guarding Min Soo and injected him with a drug, causing him to lose consciousness instantly. Soon after, Jae Young arrived at the hospital, finding the unconscious officer on the floor and Min Soo gone. She completely lost her composure. Min Soo was brought to a dark room. Before him stood Seok-ju and a masked figure. Seok-ju informed Min Soo that he was the subject of the current death penalty vote. His heart had been injected with nicotine. Seok-ju would destroy his heart instantly if the vote passed. However, he offered Min Soo a chance to live if he repented and confessed his crimes to the public, hoping it might sway the vote. But Min Soo showed no remorse for his actions. Seok-ju demanded to know why he had harmed Na-rae. Min Soo claimed he did everything to get Seok-ju's attention. He had admired and respected him, but Seok-ju had never noticed him. Seok-ju was enraged. Min Soo had taken his daughter's life for such a trivial reason. Shortly after, the death penalty broadcast resumed. Min Soo's identity and his past crimes were revealed to the public. As usual, the vote would conclude in an hour. Time ticked by, and the votes in favor quickly climbed. With each percentage point increase, Min Soo's heart rate accelerated. He displayed no repentance or fear, instead showing amusement and defiance. Hearing his words, no one could object to his execution. When the votes reached 50%, he began to writhe in pain. The police, watching through cameras, had located the building where Min Soo was held. Seok-ju realized this. He didn't flee but waited for the vote to end. An hour passed, and the votes in favor reached 87%. sealing Min Su's fate. He was on his way to meet his ancestors. Just then, the police stormed the building. Seeing them, Seok-ju moved to strangle Min Su, intending to hasten his death. But Mu Chan arrived just in time to stop him. He immediately began CPR to save Min Su's life. Seok-ju pleaded with Mu Chan to stop, but couldn't prevent him. Moments later, Seok-ju and his accomplices were arrested. Only Jae-hoon managed to escape. While transporting Min Su, Officer Choi received a call from Jae-young. She asked which vehicle her son was in. Although Min Su was in the lead car, Choi lied, saying he was in the following car with him. In an instant, Jae-young's men drove a truck directly into the lead car. She didn't realize Officer Choi was driving that car, with her own son inside. The car was thrown to the side of the road, its gas tank leaking. Mu Chan's car spun several times before crashing into the opposite curb. Mu Chan ran in to pull everyone out before the car exploded. As he got Mr. Choi out, the flames started to ignite. Mr. Seok-ju went to check on Min Su. He was still alive. There, he described how he murdered Na-rae. He'd strangled her with a rubber band and then stabbed her 13 times. Hearing these haunting words sent Mr. Seok-ju into a rage. He slowly approached Min Su, intending to attack him, but Mu Chan intervened. He urged Mr. Seok-ju to stop, the scene mirroring his attempt to prevent him from killing Woo Teek years ago. Just then, Min Su's accomplice stabbed Mu Chan from behind. Mr. Seok-ju lunged at Min Su, stabbing him with a shard of glass. Even after receiving the fatal blow, Min Su wore his familiar smirk. The car slowly caught fire and exploded in front of Mr. Seok-ju. Immediately afterward, he and the accomplice fled the scene. Mu Chan fired his gun to stop them, but to no avail. Mrs. Jae-young, upon receiving the news, arrived at the scene. She couldn't believe Min Su had died this way. Ironically, she had inadvertently orchestrated her own son's death. Mr. Choi survived but remained in critical condition. The police apprehended the truck driver. He claimed he'd fallen asleep at the wheel, but Mu Chan suspected someone had hired him. He couldn't understand how anyone knew Min Su was alive and would be passing by that location. Ju Hyan and Mu Chan reviewed Mr. Choi's call from the previous night. While in the car, he had spoken with Mrs. Jae-young. They were certain she was behind the accident, as she had asked about Min Su's seating position. Unfortunately, Mr. Choi had lied about this. Mu Chan immediately went to Mrs. Jae-young's house. He told her he knew everything, that she was behind the accident. But without sufficient evidence, he couldn't arrest her. He also warned her never to go near Mr. Choi again. Otherwise, he wouldn't let her get away with it, even if it cost him his life. Meanwhile, Mr. Seok-ju met Jae-hoon by the seaside. There, he apologized for dragging Jae-hoon into this mess. He wanted Jae-hoon to leave and go somewhere where no one could find him. He would turn himself in and confess everything. He wanted Jae-hoon to forget about his adoptive father and build a new life. He would negotiate with Mu Chan to clear Jae-hoon's name and remove the warrant for his arrest. Before leaving, Jae-hoon turned back and apologized to Mr. Seok-ju. He hadn't been able to pick up Na-rae that day because he was late. Mr. Seok-ju embraced his son. He'd never blamed Jae-hoon for that. To him, Jae-hoon was no different from his own biological child. Afterward, Mr. Seok-ju initiated another death penalty vote. This time, the subject of the vote was himself, for murder. Jae-hoon, upon receiving the news, called Shu-min to stop his father, but he couldn't. It was what Mr. Seok-ju wanted. His self-sacrifice was to prevent further bloodshed for those remaining. He knew Mrs. Jae-young wouldn't let this go. The police also located where Mr. Seok-ju was filming. Mu Chan suspected there might be a bomb inside, so he didn't dare enter directly. Meanwhile, Jae-hoon went live on air and confessed to everyone that he was Guido, the one who had initiated the death penalty votes. Jae-hoon urged everyone to oppose the ongoing death penalty vote, as Professor Seok-ju didn't deserve to die. To gain everyone's trust, Jae-hoon revealed his face and told his whole story, from Seok-ju's initial hesitation to adopt him to the murder of his sister, Nasa. He explained everything while simultaneously fleeing the police. His family had been ruined by the bastards Min Su and Woo Teek, who used money and connections to cover everything up. Assemblywoman Jae-young was the reason Seok-ju had done all of this. A man who lived so uprightly and strictly shouldn't be condemned. Thankfully, the subsequent vote was cancelled. Before Jae-hoon could celebrate, he was captured by Jae-young's men. They dragged him and Ju-min to an abandoned building and beat them. Fortunately, Ju-hyun arrived just in time, but before she could intervene, Jae-hoon was struck in the head. He collapsed, leaving everyone horrified. With his remaining strength, Jae-hoon gave Ju-hyun a USB drive before losing consciousness and passing away. Meanwhile, Seok-ju was preparing to take his own life. He no longer cared about the votes, knowing he had to pay for his illegal actions. Mu-chan, seeing this from outside, rushed in and saved him. Luckily, thanks to Mu-chan's quick first aid, Seok-ju survived. Soon after, he received the news of Jae-hoon's death. He also learned that his accomplice, Chu-min, had escaped and remained at large. Ju-hyun, also present, confronted Seok-ju, blaming him for Jae-hoon's death. Despite the danger, Jae-hoon had revealed his identity to try and save him. Hearing this, Seok-ju was devastated. His world crumbled. He couldn't believe it. The only person left in his life was now gone. On the way back to the police station, Seok-ju asked to stop by the beach. It held cherished memories of him and his daughter, Na-rae. Mu-chan couldn't refuse his final request. Seok-ju had come to terms with Na-rae's death, but not Jae-hoon's. He blamed himself entirely. Mu-chan also admitted his own share of the blame. He should have arrested Min-soo sooner. If he had, everything would have ended differently. Just then, Seok-ju's accomplice, Chu-min, arrived with Ju-hyun as a hostage. He demanded Mu-chan release Seok-ju, but Seok-ju knew he wasn't there for a rescue. He wanted the death penalty voting app Seok-ju possessed. Seok-ju produced the USB drive, promising to hand it over if Chu-min let Ju-hyun go. Seizing an opportunity, Ju-hyun knocked the gun out of Chu-min's hand. He lunged at Seok-ju to grab the app, but Mu-chan shot him. The shot inadvertently sent both men tumbling into the sea. Mu-chan immediately jumped in after them but couldn't find them. Despite a subsequent search, the police couldn't recover their bodies, leaving Seok-ju's fate unknown. After days of fruitless searching, the police closed the case, declaring Seok-ju and his accomplice dead. The accomplice doctor was arrested, and the police concluded that Jae-hoon had been murdered by Seok-ju's men. They didn't bother to investigate further, even though the true killer was Jae-young. That night, Mu-chan reviewed everything. He noticed something unusual about the room where Min-soo murdered Na-rae. The pillar in the video Min-soo recorded was smaller than the current one. Immediately, he ordered the demolition of the room's floor. Upon hearing this, Jae-young arrived to stop him. But how could she? Mu-chan smashed the central pillar, revealing another pillar inside. It was covered in blood, presumably Na-rae's. To conceal this, Jae-young had another pillar built around the original. Mu-chan now had enough evidence to accuse her of destroying evidence and aiding and abetting her son's murder. Meanwhile, Captain Choi had regained consciousness and would testify against her for bribery. Jae-young, left speechless, was taken to the police station. With everything concluded, Ju-hyun threw away the death penalty voting app Jae-hoon had given her. She no longer needed it, and no one could continue down the path Seok-ju had forged. A year passed, and Sojin constantly remembered Jae-hoon. On his birthday, she sent him a special message. Ju-min told him about her current life and future plans. Though she knew he couldn't respond, she wanted to keep him alive in her heart. Using her wealth and connections, Jae-young was later released. From that day forward, she dedicated herself to charity work. It seemed like an attempt at atonement, but it was merely a cover for her future plans. Jae-young stepped into a car. Inside was a hacker she had recently recruited. She held the death penalty voting app in her hand. It seemed she would continue to create her own world. That day, a mysterious person sent Mu-chan a package. Inside was a USB drive with the Gedo logo. He was startled to receive it. At that moment, he ran into Ju-hyun after a long time. He asked her if she knew about Seok-ju's petition for Jae-hoon, which he couldn't find. Ju-hyun was unaware, hearing about it for the first time. She wondered aloud if Seok-ju was really dead. Mu-chan, having just received the USB drive, shared the same uncertainty. Like Mu-chan, Ju-hyun had secrets she kept hidden. She had received a letter from Seok-ju before his suicide. Inside, he took full responsibility, claiming Jae-hoon was innocent. He admitted his actions were unconventional, but he would do it all again. It wasn't personal revenge, but a desire to punish those the police couldn't touch. His death wouldn't stop it. Someone else would rise to punish the remaining evil in the world. This concludes the film The Death Penalty Vote. See you in the next video.